During boys' night, my husband went live on social media. He didn't see my comment under a fake name. They were ranking their wives. She's at the bottom, he said. She thinks her job is impressive, but it's just cute. I just watched. 2 hours later, he was outside, crying, asking if I watched. It started on a Saturday like any other. The kind of Saturday that smelled like lemon cleaner and sounded like my son thundering down the hallway with socks too slippery for the hardwood floors. Portland was cold that week, even by February standards. The type of damp cold that seeps into your knees if you stand too long. My name is Anais. I'm 38, a licensed therapist who works both in person and over Zoom now. I specialize in trauma and emotional regulation, mostly for women and couples. I help people understand why they feel what they feel, and maybe how to not destroy themselves in the process. And the irony? I didn't see it coming. That night, my husband Kellen was headed to his usual guys' night. He and his old college friends had made it a thing over the past 2 years. Sometimes it was poker. Sometimes video games. Sometimes just an excuse to drink and complain about their wives, I guess. He was wearing the blue flannel I gave him last Christmas. Hair a little messy. He kissed our son Leo goodnight and then leaned down to give me a peck on the cheek. I noticed he smelled like Old Spice and IPA before he even cracked one open. "You okay?" he asked, reaching for his keys. "Yeah. Just tired." He gave me that squinting half smile he does when he doesn't want to push it. "Call me if you need anything." I nodded. "Have fun." I watched him walk out the door. I always did. We'd been married 11 years. That's what you do. You watch them go, not knowing it's the last time you'll trust that version of them. Around 10:17 p.m., I was curled up in bed with a mug of tea, scrolling on my phone with a heating pad over my stomach. Typical Saturday night for a mom who works full-time and has 2 loads of laundry staring her down from the hallway. I wasn't checking up on Kellen. I swear I wasn't. I was just aimlessly scrolling Instagram when I saw the red circle around Colton's profile picture. Live now. Colton was Kellen's closest friend in that group, loud, brash, kind of a frat boy energy he never outgrew even at 40. He overshared a lot. He'd been live before while they were out, but I usually skipped them. But that night, something told me to click. The live started like most do, just noise and shifting images. They were in Colton's condo, judging by the dark leather sectional and the framed sports memorabilia in the background. Pizza boxes on the table. Someone had spilled a beer. A dog barked in the background, Colton's husky, I think. Then I saw him. Kellen. Sitting dead center in a swivel chair, red Solo cup in hand, laughing like he didn't have a care in the world. It felt strange, watching him from behind the screen like that. Like watching your husband in a movie where you don't know the plot. They were playing some kind of drinking game. Questions, dares. Then Wes, the tallest of the bunch, leaned forward and grinned at the camera. Okay, rank the wives. Based on like, who you'd want to switch with. Who's chill? Who's hot? Whatever. The rest of the guys held in laughter. Some protested, jokingly. But no one stopped it. All right, someone said. I think it was Jace. Kellen, you first. Kellen took a long sip of his drink. He was flushed, probably 3 or 4 beers in already. Number 1, he said, thinking. Gotta be Kira. She lets Wes do whatever. No curfew. No lectures. Everyone laughed. 2, maybe Marcy. She works nights, so Colton gets like, a bachelor schedule still. The list kept going. I felt something hollow forming in my stomach. Some twisted version of anticipation. Like waiting for a doctor to say something terrible. Kellen leaned back in his chair and rubbed his chin. Bottom of the list? I mean. Anais. It was quiet for a second, just a second. Don't get me wrong, he added, chuckling. She's sweet. And smart. But I dunno. She takes herself too seriously. She thinks her job's impressive, but it's just cute. Someone snorted. You mean like play therapy and feelings and stuff? Exactly, Kellen said, laughing. She acts like she's solving world peace. It's just talking. And crying. I stared at the screen. It wasn't shock. It was worse. It was clarity. He wasn't trying to be cruel. That made it worse, somehow. He was trying to be funny. He said it the way men do when they think they're being casually honest, harmless. As if their words don't cling to the walls of the people who hear them. I made a burner account on the spot. No profile picture. Username at just another Portlander. I typed one comment, brutal. Hope your wife doesn't see this. It disappeared into the chat, unnoticed. The live went on for another 30 minutes. I watched every second. I didn't know why. Maybe I was trying to find a way to forgive it while watching. Maybe I thought he'd say something redeeming. He didn't. When he got home around 12:30, I was already in the guest room. The bedroom we usually only used when one of us was sick. I heard him come in, softly. Heard the fridge open. A bottle cap fall into the sink. Then footsteps in the hallway. He called my name once, then again, softer. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to speak to him as the version of myself he had ranked last. 2 hours later, I heard a knock. Not on the front door. On the sliding glass door in the kitchen, the one that leads to the backyard. He was standing out there in his socks and t-shirt, arms crossed against the cold. Eyes red, cheeks wet. Anais, he said through the glass. Can we talk? I didn't move. He knocked again. Gently. I need to know. Did you see it? I didn't answer. He sat down on the porch step and put his head in his hands. He looked like a man who'd been hit with a truth he never wanted to see. I was drunk, he said. I was trying to be funny. I don't believe any of that. I swear. Still, I stayed silent. The cold eventually drove him back inside. I heard the couch cushions rustle. The blanket drawer open. He didn't come to bed. I didn't want him to. The next morning, the sun rose over Portland in that gray, heavy way it sometimes does, where it feels like the clouds are sitting just above the rooftops. The rain hadn't started yet, but the streets were wet, probably from a quiet drizzle overnight. I was in the kitchen early, barefoot on cold tile, making eggs I didn't want and coffee I wouldn't finish. Leo padded in around 7:30, sleep still in his eyes, dragging his dinosaur blanket behind him. He didn't ask why I wasn't in the usual bed. He was 7. But he noticed. Daddy sleeping on the couch? He asked between bites of toast. I nodded. He had a late night. That was all I said. That was all he needed. Kellen emerged around 9 o'clock, slow and disheveled. His hair was flattened on one side. He looked like he'd slept on regret. He said good morning to Leo, kissed his head, then glanced at me, waiting. I didn't look up from my coffee. Can we talk later? He asked. His voice was gentle, almost rehearsed. I have clients, I replied, flat. He nodded. I'll wait. But I think we both knew he was already out of time. For the next few days, life continued like a movie scene where the background blurs and the actors move through it slowly. I kept up with work. Saw clients. Took Leo to school and karate. Smiled when needed. But I could feel the shift. You know that feeling when you hear something you can't unhear? That's what I carried. That soundbite of him saying I was at the bottom. That my job was just cute. It looped in my head like a curse. And the most infuriating part? He acted like it had just slipped out. Like it didn't mean anything. But words don't just slip. Not like that. Not when they come with a ranking. Not when you've been married over a decade and this is the first time you hear how little he thinks of what you've built. On Wednesday, while Leo was at school, I finally asked him to sit down. Not because I was ready to talk, but because I needed to hear what kind of man would dig a hole that deep, then expect me to build the ladder out. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The same table where we'd shared anniversary dinners, birthday cakes, late-night snacks after Leo's nightmares. Now it was a battlefield. I messed up, Kellen started. I was drinking and trying to keep up with the guys. It was stupid. I didn't think. You didn't think I'd see it, I corrected. That's not the same. He rubbed his face. It was a joke. You know, I don't really believe that stuff. No, I said. I don't know that. Silence fell between us. Heavy. Tense. Do you really think my job is just cute? I asked. And I hated that I had to ask. Hated that I needed him to explain it like I was one of my own clients trying to claw through their partner's carelessness. He shook his head. No. Not in the way it sounded. I just meant, don't, I cut in. Don't walk it back with qualifiers. He slumped forward, elbows on the table. I'm sorry. I was being an a-hole. I was trying to get a laugh, and I used you to do it. I regret it more than you know. I believed the regret. That much was clear. But I didn't believe he respected me. Not really. Not deep down. Respect isn't what you say when you're sober. It's what you say when you think no one's watching. The worst part was how it made me question everything in our history. Every compliment. Every anniversary letter. Every "I'm proud of you" after I'd gotten a new client or hosted a community workshop. Was it real? Or was it performative? Was I ever seen as an equal? I started noticing more, the way he interrupted me in group settings, the way he'd gloss over anything I said about my work unless it was dramatic or juicy. The way he introduced me at events as my wife Anais, she's basically like a therapist. As if it were a cute little extension of being nurturing. Not a real job. Not real labor. I wanted to scream. Instead, I started detaching. Not in a loud, dramatic way. In quiet ways. I stopped cooking for 2. I started going to sleep before he came to bed. I made appointments during times we'd normally have lunch together. I answered with nods, not words. One night, I was lying awake, listening to the rain drum against the roof. Kellen rolled over and whispered, "Can we start over?" I didn't answer. I didn't have the energy to explain that this wasn't something you restart. It wasn't a game. You don't get a new round when the damage is that specific. I took a day off work the following week. Just one. I dropped Leo off at school, drove to the Columbia River Gorge, and hiked a trail we used to do when we first dated. Back when we talked for hours about everything. Back when he told me he admired my mind. I sat on a wet rock near a lookout and cried. Not loud, not even a sob. Just a quiet, sustained leaking of everything I had held in. Grief. Disappointment. A deep, aching kind of loneliness that can only exist in the presence of someone you love. I realized then that I hadn't felt seen in a long time. Maybe years. And I'd been pretending that his affection meant he valued me. But love without respect is just performance. I drove home, stopped for takeout, and didn't mention the trip to him. He noticed, though. He always notices when I start protecting my peace. That night, he sat on the edge of the bed while I brushed my teeth and said, "I feel like I'm losing you." I paused in the mirror. "You feel that way," I said slowly, "because you are." The days stretched on, quietly shifting beneath our feet like unstable ground. Kellen started trying harder. That's the thing about guilt, it doesn't show up early. It arrives late and loud and full of apologies after the impact has already cracked the foundation. He started doing small things. He made Leo's lunches in the morning. He cleaned the bathrooms without me asking. He folded towels I had just taken out of the dryer. But it was all soaked in that desperate energy people carry when they realize they've broken something they can't name, let alone fix. One evening, I came home from a late session, and the house smelled like roasted garlic and lemon chicken, my favorite. He had cooked dinner. Leo was already bathed, in his pajamas, watching a cartoon. The table was set with candles. Not romantic candles. Just effort. I thought we could eat together, Kellen said. I sat down. Ate the food. Said thank you. And when he asked how my day was, I told him the truth, not just the highlights. I told him about a teenage girl who sobbed in my office because she felt invisible in her family. I told him about a woman who'd just walked away from a 15-year marriage after hearing her husband say one sentence in passing that she couldn't forget. Kellen didn't respond at first. Then he said, "Do you ever worry you're absorbing too much?" "All the time," I said. He nodded. I never realized it was that heavy. And I wanted to scream again, because that was the problem. That after 11 years of hearing about my clients, my work, my exhaustion, he never realized. Because he never listened the way I did. But I just nodded. That was all I had in me. We started sleeping in the same bed again after about 3 weeks. Not touching. Just existing beside each other. Familiar, but far. Some nights he'd try to talk. About us. About Leo. About how hard he was working on a new client proposal. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I couldn't pretend his voice didn't still echo in my head from that live stream. She's at the bottom. She thinks her job is impressive, but it's just cute. You don't forget words like that. Not when they come from someone who knows the weight of yours. I started journaling again. Not the polished, intentional journaling I used to do for mindfulness. Raw stuff. Late-night scribbles in a moleskin journal, sitting cross-legged on the guest bed with a glass of red wine. I wrote about resentment. About performance. About how I had shaped myself around his comfort and how hollow that had started to feel. One afternoon, I was picking Leo up from school and saw one of the other moms, Elise, who I usually only exchanged pleasantries with. That day, she lingered. "Hey, Anais, can I ask you something?" "Sure." She hesitated. "I don't mean to pry, but I saw a clip of a video online a few weeks ago. Someone reposted it. From that guy's night thing? With your husband?" My blood turned to ice. She must have seen my face. "I didn't even realize it was your Kellen until someone in the comments said his name," she added quickly. I was so angry on your behalf. I wanted to say something, but it felt invasive. I nodded. "Thanks for telling me." Then I went home and sat in my car in the driveway for 10 full minutes, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from floating away. He hadn't deleted the video. Worse, it had made its way into the weird corners of social media where people screen record anything controversial. Some strangers were probably out there debating my marriage like a podcast topic. And that's when it hit me, he hadn't just betrayed me in private. He'd done it in public. Not a whisper. A broadcast. I confronted him that night. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't shaking. I was quiet. Clear. People saw that video, Kellen. People I know. He looked like he'd been hit. I didn't know. I thought it was gone, Colton was supposed to take it down. "Doesn't matter," I said. "It's out there. You put it out there." I swear, I didn't think, no, I cut in. "You didn't think. You never do when it comes to me. You think about the guys. About looking cool. About being funny. You think about how to keep the room laughing. You don't think about me." He sat down hard on the edge of the couch. "I've said I'm sorry 100 times. And I've heard you," I said. "But I can't feel it. Because you're still the same man who said those things. You haven't unlearned them. You haven't done the work. He ran a hand through his hair. Then help me. I want to fix it. And I wanted to say yes. I wanted to. Because that's what we're taught, right? That if someone's sorry, you forgive them. That marriage is hard. That no one's perfect. That if he's crying and trying, it means something. But trying is not the same as changing. And I didn't want to be the project he fixed. I wanted to be the partner he never disrespected in the first place. A few nights later, he asked if I would go with him to therapy. Couples counseling. I told him maybe. But what I didn't tell him was that I had already scheduled a solo appointment for myself. Not as a therapist, but as a client. Because I needed someone to help me make sense of all the quiet years where I hadn't realized I was shrinking. Someone who could mirror back the parts of me I had dulled down in order to keep the peace. The next morning, I dropped Leo off at school again. On the way home, I passed a flower shop and remembered how Kellen used to bring home daisies just because. He hadn't in years. I hadn't noticed until now. When I pulled into the driveway, Kellen's truck was gone. He had a job site across town. The house was quiet, sun just starting to peek through the blinds. I walked into the kitchen and opened the cabinet where we kept the mugs. One fell out and shattered on the counter. The one I bought in Santa Cruz on our anniversary trip. I stared at the broken pieces. And for some reason, I didn't clean them up right away. I just looked at them, jagged, sharp, irreparable. I stood there, still, as the silence filled everything. I left the broken mug where it was for nearly an hour. It wasn't spite. It wasn't symbolism. It just was. I sat at the table drinking tea from another cup, watching the pieces on the counter, feeling strangely comforted by their honesty. There was no pretending they weren't broken. No polite reshaping. Just sharp fragments of something that used to hold warmth. The metaphors practically wrote themselves. Later, I swept it all into a brown paper bag, carefully, methodically, and tossed it in the outside bin. I didn't want to leave it in the kitchen trash. It felt like a quiet kind of funeral. In therapy, I told my counselor, Ruth, that I wasn't angry so much as done. And that scared me. She nodded, calm and kind. She didn't push. Done can mean a lot of things, she said. Sometimes it means ending. Sometimes it means changing. Sometimes it's just the beginning of listening to yourself again. I told her I couldn't unhear his words. That I had tried. That I wanted to believe he didn't mean it, but part of me knew that level of condescension doesn't come from nowhere. He's always joked about my job, I said. In front of friends, at parties. Nothing too biting. But I used to laugh. I thought it was harmless. And now? I feel like I let it chip away at me. One comment at a time. I told her about the way he talked over me. About how he used to ask what I really did in sessions. About how he once called my work emotional babysitting when he was annoyed after I canceled plans for a last-minute crisis client. He apologized afterward, I added quickly, like it mattered. Ruth just looked at me gently and said, apologies don't change patterns. Actions do. I went quiet. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't about one live video. It was about the dozens of moments I'd swept under the rug to preserve a marriage that looked healthy from the outside. At home, Kellen had become gentler. Too gentle, honestly. He walked like the floor might break beneath him. Asked permission to make plans. Asked if I needed anything every single time he left a room. It wasn't humility. It was fear. And I didn't know what to do with that. Because I didn't want to be feared. I wanted to be respected. I wanted to be loved in a way that didn't come from the guilt of being caught. He asked again if we could go to couples counseling. I said I was still thinking about it. He asked if I wanted to do a weekend away. Just us. Maybe get back to who we were. I told him I didn't think a weekend could fix a fracture this deep. Then, one night, something unexpected happened. I came home from the grocery store and found him in the garage. He was sitting on an old folding chair, holding a printed transcript of the video. I didn't ask how he got it. Maybe someone had sent it to him. Maybe he found it reposted like I had. He looked up at me, eyes hollow. He didn't say anything. But on the concrete floor beside him, he had written out phrases in thick black Sharpie on cardboard. Each one from the video. She's at the bottom. She thinks her job is impressive. It's just cute. It's just talking. She won't see this. They were laid out like evidence. Or maybe confession. What is this? I asked, voice quiet. He looked up, tear-streaked, and said, I needed to see it all. To really see it. I didn't speak. Reading it, he said, it feels worse than it sounded. I sound like a guy I wouldn't want our son to become. I nodded once. You do. He wiped his nose. I didn't respect you. And I didn't realize how deep that went until I heard myself out loud. I thought I was joking. But you don't joke like that about someone you truly admire. It was the first time he'd said it plainly. I'm not asking you to forgive me today, he said. I just needed to own it. Out loud. In front of you. Then he folded the cardboard pieces, slowly, one by one, and stacked them in a pile. I turned to leave but paused. I don't need proof of your guilt, I said. I need to know if you're willing to rebuild something you never valued to begin with. I am, he said. I swear. I didn't reply. I didn't believe in swears anymore. A few days later, he brought home a book on emotional labor. Left it on the kitchen table without comment. Then he asked if I'd read it with him. Just a chapter at a time. No pressure. It was such a small thing. But it was different. Real effort isn't loud. It's not performative. It's quiet, repetitive, and unglamorous. It shows up in the margins, not the main scenes. We read the first chapter over coffee the next Sunday. It talked about how women often carry invisible responsibilities, emotional logistics, family memory, social calendars, household equilibrium. He looked up after a paragraph and said, "This is you." I nodded. It's most women I know. He looked away, ashamed. But he kept reading. That same week, Leo asked why we didn't eat dinner at the table together anymore. I told him sometimes grown-ups need space when they're trying to fix things. He thought about that and said, you and Daddy should do puzzles again. You used to laugh more when you did puzzles. I almost cried. Later that night, Kellen pulled an old puzzle box out of the hall closet. One we never finished. A lighthouse on the Oregon coast. He poured it out onto the table and didn't say anything. I sat down beside him. Not because I forgave him. But because maybe, just maybe, there was something worth rebuilding, piece by tiny, patient piece. We worked on that puzzle for a week. Not every night, some days, I couldn't bring myself to sit at that table with him. Some days, the sound of his voice was too loud, even when he was whispering. But on the nights I could, I sat beside him, fingers sifting through pieces, neither of us talking much. That puzzle became a language. The quiet kind. He let me pick the corner pieces. He didn't rush. Didn't correct. He just sat there. And in that silence, I realized something. I didn't want the old version of us back. I didn't want to rewind, or repair, or soften what had been done. I wanted to rebuild me. I wanted him to watch me rebuild myself without asking to be part of the process. A month later, I got invited to speak at a professional conference in Seattle. It was a last-minute opening, a keynote speaker had canceled, and they needed someone who could talk about emotional labor and long-term relationship dynamics. I said yes before they finished the sentence. It was a big deal. Bigger than anything I'd done before. I'd be speaking to a packed auditorium, therapists, counselors, psychology students, even a few published authors I admired. When I told Kellen about it, he blinked. Keynote, he said. Yeah. Damn. That's incredible. Then, like he caught himself, he added, you really deserve this, Anais. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he said it. Carefully. Like he finally understood that his words weren't decorations, they were currency. I thanked him and didn't wait for his approval. Because I didn't need it anymore. The conference weekend arrived. I got a hotel room downtown even though it was only a 3-hour drive from Portland. I wanted the space. I brought a black blazer, clean heels, and printed my speech on thick paper. No laptop. I didn't want any distractions. No PowerPoint. Just my words. My talk was called, The Invisible Ladder, How We Rank Each Other in Relationships and Don't Even Realize It. It was personal. Not in a crying onstage way, but in a measured, surgical way. I talked about hierarchy in marriages. About the joking we do at our partner's expense. About how women, especially professional women, get reduced to cute no matter how hard they work. I didn't name Kellen. But I saw 3 people in the front row nod at a part where I said, the people we love don't need to say they're proud of us. They need to respect us. Otherwise, their love is just noise. Afterward, a small line formed. Therapists thanking me. People asking questions. A woman, about 60, took my hand and whispered, you said everything I wish I'd had the words for 30 years ago. That moment did more healing for me than Kellen ever could. Now, here's where the satisfying part begins. 2 weeks after the conference, I was asked to come back for a panel event, this time in San Francisco. A publisher had been in the audience. She approached me about writing a book. A real one. Not a blog. Not a series of articles. A book with a spine. The title was obvious. At the bottom, Unpacking Emotional Labor in Modern Relationships. I signed the deal 3 months later. That was when everything in the house began to shift. Kellen never said it out loud, but I saw it in his face. The realization that he had been married to a woman who was building something bigger than either of us. And he wasn't part of it. He tried to be supportive. He bought me a fancy writing journal. He made dinner on the nights I worked late. He even told his friends I was working on a book. But I saw the quiet panic under it all. He used to be the star of the show. The breadwinner. The one with the more tangible job. And now? People were asking me for interviews. I was consulting on a podcast. My client waitlist doubled. Even Leo started calling me famous. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. But I didn't downplay it either. I let him sit with it. Let him feel what it's like to live with someone who is respected publicly and privately. Someone whose job is not cute. 6 months after the book deal, I asked Kellen to sit down again. Same kitchen table. No puzzles this time. Just 2 cups of tea and a single sheet of paper between us. He looked at it and paused. What's this? He asked, even though he knew. Separation agreement, I said. He blinked. Wait. I thought things were getting better. They are, I said. For me. He didn't argue. That surprised me. But it didn't surprise me as much as what he said next. Is this revenge? I looked at him, calm and grounded in a way I hadn't been in years. No, I said. This is accountability. He stared down at the paper, then at me. You're really doing this? I nodded. And you're not a bad person, Kellen. But you're not my person anymore. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat with it. Like I had sat with all the times he dismissed me. And that, in itself, was justice. We co-parent now. Leo is thriving. We split holidays without drama. Kellen has since gone to therapy, real therapy. He's even posted about men and emotional labor on his social media. Sometimes I wonder if he would have done any of that if I had just stayed. Kept shrinking. Smiled through it. Let it slide. I doubt it. My book hit shelves a year after the video. In the acknowledgements, I wrote, "To the people who underestimate others, you're often the ones who teach us our strength." It hit the top of a niche nonfiction list in under 2 weeks. People asked if the story was based on my marriage. I just smiled. Partially, I'd say. But mostly? It's about what happens when we stop accepting love that only shows up after the damage is done. That video? It still exists online. But now, when someone searches for my name, they find my book first. Not him. Not the ranking. Me. At the top.